The Battle of Stalingrad. The name alone carries an almost mythical weight, evoking images of devastation, unyielding resistance, and a pivotal moment that changed the trajectory of World War II. It wasn't just a battle, it was a clash of ideologies, wills, and strategies that became a defining moment in history. Stalingrad wasn't merely a city, it was a symbol of the Soviet determination to defend their homeland at any cost, and a symbol of the catastrophic hubris of Hitler's Wehrmacht, whose relentless push into the Soviet Union would ultimately collapse under its own weight. Today, we'll dive deep into this monumental event, exploring not just the strategies and outcomes, but the human stories and sacrifices that made it one of the most dramatic and decisive battles in modern history. To set the stage, let's go back to 1942. The Axis powers were riding high. Germany had secured victories across Europe, North Africa, and the Western Soviet Union. Hitler was confident, perhaps overly so, that his armies could deal a final blow to the USSR. His focus shifted to the south, to the rich oil fields of the Caucasus, and crucially, to the industrial city of Stalingrad on the Volga River. Stalingrad was not only a key logistical hub, but also bore Stalin's name, making it a psychological prize that Hitler was determined to capture. To him, taking Stalingrad wasn't just about resources or strategy, it was about prestige. But this hubris, as history would show, would lead to his undoing. By the summer of 1942, the German Sixth Army, under the command of General Friedrich Paulus, began its push towards Stalingrad. The Luftwaffe bombed the city relentlessly, reducing much of it to rubble even before the bulk of the fighting began. The devastation was so complete that some might assume the city was already lost. But the Soviets saw opportunity in the ruins. Every destroyed building, every crater, and every pile of rubble became a defensive position, a fortress where soldiers could hide, ambush, and resist the advancing German forces. This would become a key theme in the battle, the transformation of destruction into resistance. As the Germans moved into the city, they quickly discovered that urban warfare in Stalingrad was unlike anything they had experienced. The Soviets employed a tactic known as hugging the enemy. By keeping their positions as close to the Germans as possible, they neutralized the effectiveness of German air support and artillery. The fighting became bitter and personal, with both sides engaging in brutal close-quarters combat. Battles were fought over individual buildings, floors, and even rooms. One iconic example is the battle for Pavlov's house, where a Soviet garrison held off waves of German assaults for nearly 2 months, turning the modest apartment block into a symbol of defiance. But Stalingrad wasn't just a test of strategy or tactics, it was a test of endurance. The Germans had underestimated both the Soviet will to resist and their capacity to reinforce their positions. Soviet reinforcements poured across the Volga River under constant fire from German artillery. Civilians, soldiers, and even prisoners were pressed into service to keep the supply lines open. Meanwhile, the Soviet winter was approaching, a factor that had already crippled the German advance during the previous year's Operation Barbarossa. Yet Hitler, obsessed with the symbolic importance of Stalingrad, ordered Paulus to hold his ground and push forward, no matter the cost. By November 1942, the tide began to turn. The Soviets, under the command of Generals Georgy Zhukov and Alexander Vasilevsky, launched Operation Uranus, a massive counteroffensive designed to encircle the German forces in Stalingrad. The plan exploited a critical weakness in the German line, their reliance on under-equipped and overextended Romanian and Italian troops to guard their flanks. In a swift and coordinated assault, Soviet forces broke through these weaker defenses and closed the encirclement around Stalingrad, trapping the Sixth Army and elements of the Fourth Panzer Army within the city. For Paulus and his men, the encirclement was a nightmare. Cut off from supplies, reinforcements, and escape, they faced a brutal Soviet winter with dwindling resources. Hitler, refusing to authorize a retreat, ordered them to hold their ground and promised relief in the form of an attempted breakthrough by Field Marshal Erich von Manstein's forces. But this relief effort, known as Operation Winter Storm, was ultimately repelled by the Soviets. The Luftwaffe's efforts to supply the trapped Sixth Army by air also fell far short, with many supply planes shot down or unable to deliver enough resources to sustain the besieged troops. Please take a moment to like and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss any new daily videos. Inside the encirclement, conditions deteriorated rapidly. Soldiers suffered from frostbite, starvation, and disease. Morale plummeted as it became clear that no relief was coming. Soviet propaganda loudspeakers blared messages urging the Germans to surrender, promising humane treatment to those who did. For months, the Germans held on, clinging to the faint hope that Hitler's promised reinforcements would arrive. But by January 1943, the situation had become untenable. Soviet forces, now fully in control of the offensive, began systematically reducing the German pocket. Paulus, promoted to field marshal by Hitler in a futile gesture, meant to encourage him to fight to the death, finally surrendered on January 31, 1943. It was a stunning blow to the German war effort. Of the approximately 300,000 Axis troops initially committed to the battle, only about 91,000 were taken prisoner, and many of these would die in Soviet captivity. The once vaunted Sixth Army was effectively destroyed. The significance of the Battle of Stalingrad cannot be overstated. It was a turning point not only on the Eastern Front, but in the entire war. The Germans had suffered a catastrophic defeat, one from which their forces would never fully recover. The loss marked the beginning of a relentless Soviet push westward, culminating in the eventual capture of Berlin in 1945. For the Soviets, the victory at Stalingrad was a source of immense national pride and a rallying cry for the continued struggle against the Axis powers. But beyond the strategic implications, Stalingrad was a human tragedy on an almost unimaginable scale. Estimates of total casualties, military and civilian, range from 1.2 to 2 million, making it one of the bloodiest battles in history. The city itself was left in ruins, with much of its pre-war population displaced or killed. The battle exemplified the horrors of modern warfare, from indiscriminate bombings and urban combat to the suffering caused by starvation and exposure. And yet, amid the devastation, stories of incredible resilience and courage emerged. From the defenders of Pavlov's house to the countless Soviet soldiers and civilians who refused to give up their city, Stalingrad became a testament to the human spirit's ability to endure in the face of overwhelming odds. As we reflect on this monumental battle, it's important to remember not just the strategic and historical lessons, but also the human cost of war. Stalingrad was a turning point, yes, but it was also a tragedy, a stark reminder of the price of hubris, the brutality of conflict, and the resilience of those caught in its midst. Thank you for joining us on this journey into one of history's most defining moments. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the Battle of Stalingrad, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more content like this. And remember, history is full of incredible stories waiting to be explored. Stay curious.